much longer are you gonna keep eating junk food, binge watching Netflix, playing Fortnite, whatever the video games that 14-year-olds are playing nowadays, for hours and hours and hours? Well, look, in this video, I wanna show you how easy it is to do certain things, but more importantly, how we can trick our brains into doing the hard things. This video is going to be on how I trick my brain onto doing those hard things. Hey, if you're new to this channel, my name is Richard. I'm an entrepreneur as well as a high performance coach, and I'm glad that you're here with me today because I actually want to show you how I was able to trick my brain into doing those hard things. And I know that by the end of this video, that business that you wanted to start, that project, that passion project, that new hobby that you wanted to give some time to, you're going to be able to take action on that one thing, right? Because when it comes down to what we want to do, typically we will always gravitate towards the path of least resistance. Point in case, if you have a delicious plate of salad and it's got nice fruit on it, it's got nice berries, good lean chicken breasts, but then you place a nice big bag of chips right next to it, chances are, which one are you going to take if you could only choose one of the two? A lot of people, because of our cravings for sodium, for all the deliciousness of that bag of Doritos, we're going to go and grab that. So how do we actually choose the right thing in this case, the healthy, the right decision? So the fundamental concept here that I need for you to understand is actually this neurotransmitter called dopamine. And dopamine is something that you're probably familiar with. Dopamine is a hormone, it's a neurotransmitter that's in our brain, right? And it circulates and it fires off different frequencies of clicks every time that we do something. Dopamine is typically associated with pleasure as well as motivation, more specifically desire. Now when you think about it, dopamine happens in everything that we do. When someone tells us a funny joke, our brain gives us a hit of dopamine. When we eat something really tasty, we get a hit of dopamine. When we have sex, when we ride roller coasters, when we jump off airplanes, we have very elevated levels of dopamine. Now what happens is when we typically do things that are really fun, that are enjoyable, that's simply higher levels of dopamine. This is why people get addicted to drugs very easily, because drugs tend to release a lot of dopamine and our brains just feel like they're on fire with so much pleasure. It's the same when it comes to watching pornography on the internet, because you're literally watching all this novelty. Now the problem here is when you get all these high levels of dopamine, what starts to happen is something called a dopamine tolerance. A good example of dopamine tolerance is this. Imagine you had steak dinners every single night. And so the first time you go to a steak dinner, you think to yourself, wow, this is such an incredible restaurant. But what happens if you go to that restaurant every single day? You start to get a little tired of it, right? And then what happens is after you have this really expensive, high-end luxury steak dinner, when you look at that, you're gonna start thinking to yourself, oh man, this is so much worse compared to that delicious plate of steak. And so what happens here is you've essentially developed a tolerance to that level of dopamine that was given to you by that steak dinner. Because that is your new threshold of dopamine, anything less than that, meaning anything that has less luxury than that steak dinner, is going to bring less dopamine to you. And so here's the problem. Because if we're constantly immersing ourselves in activities that bring us high levels of dopamine, like watching a lot of internet pornography, like eating a lot of junk food, looking at a lot of things on social media, what happens to us is we start to become addicted and we begin to crave this high level of dopamine. It's the exact reason why you love checking your phone so much. You always like looking for text messages, because think about it. Every time you get a like on Instagram, every time you get a direct message, every time a friend sends you a text message, yes, you got me right, that actually leads to increased levels of dopamine. And to put it all together, this is why most of us can't do those hard things. Because in our lives, there's too many simple things that bring us already high levels of dopamine exposure. So when we think about building a business, when we think about grinding down and actually doing well for an exam, and we think about preparing for some kind of big project or some kind of hobby that we want to start, those things are no longer that desirable to us anymore because we're comparing it to other sources of dopamine that give us so much more of it. Our brain is naturally going to gravitate towards those. So how do we actually trick our brains into doing those harder things? The solution is actually going to be found through what I call a dopamine detox. A dopamine detox is essentially leveling out your dopamine playing field so that you're no longer being bombarded by all these things all the time. So I'll give you a solution here. The first high performance lesson when it comes to dopamine detox is if you want to keep it very simple, just pick one day every single week in which you begin to detox on all your hits of dopamine. So for myself, I personally choose Sundays because that is my day of rest. I want to respect the Sabbath. And a dopamine detox is very simple. It just means taking off time from all the things that typically give you a lot of dopamine. So for myself, things like watching television, going on my phone, checking social media, eating a lot of binge foods, unhealthy foods, those things give me high levels of dopamine. So if you can pick one day of the week in which you just tell yourself, you know what, I'm not gonna touch these things, that's going to significantly bring down your dopamine levels. And get this, you're likely gonna feel really bored. You might be there kind of twiddling your thumbs thinking to yourself, man, I don't know, this is really boring. But this is the cool part. Because you're toning down your dopamine levels, all of a sudden now, going to the gym, building a business, reading a book, studying for that class, those things start to become much more exciting to you. So that's the first way that I'd encourage for you to do a dopamine detox. A quick way that you could get started on this, and this is something that I personally practice, is to block off a 4-hour window, just one, over the course of your 7-day period in which you don't touch your phone at all. For myself, typically from the time I wake up on a Sunday morning all the way until noon, I don't check my phone. The reason why is because Sunday is my day of rest, and I want to take that entire time to completely get off of electronics. That's bringing my dopamine levels down so that by Monday, I'm that much more excited to get back to work. The second way to hack your dopamine levels is to always do the hardest things first. Think about it. If you go from watching TV, playing video games, eating junk food, to all of a sudden having to switch over to studying, to building a business, to reading a book, is it gonna be that motivating and exciting? Chances are no. Because what has happened is you have gone from something that is bringing you so much desire, so many hits of dopamine, to all of a sudden switching over to something that is objectively going to bring you less dopamine. But if we go ahead and flip that around and we do the hard things first, you wake up first thing in the morning, attack the hardest goals, start studying for your most difficult tests, start building your business, handling that one email to your employee that you didn't want to handle, whatever that issue may be. Once you can handle that, then everything else is a breeze. Personally for myself, I always like to go hard every single day, about 8 to 10 hours on a working day, specifically focusing on my business. And then heck yeah, at the end of the day, I'll enjoy a nice dinner. I'll enjoy a nice treat, maybe go out for an ice cream sandwich, go out for some gelato, or maybe just watch some TV. That stuff is great. We just want to save it to the end of the day because it's objectively going to be a lot harder to move from easy to hard as opposed to going from harder tasks to easier tasks. And the third high performance lesson I want to give you for cutting out dopamine levels is to set non-negotiable rules in your life to cut out certain sources of dopamine that no one should be looking at. Look, eating certain unhealthy foods, like 3 bags of Doritos over the course of a week, eating ice cream every single night. A lot of these things we shouldn't be doing and you know you shouldn't be doing. So set rules in your life. Throw out the junk food. Make a rule and say, you know what, every single week when I go to the grocery store, I'm only gonna buy enough junk food for 1 day per week. Because that way, as soon as you finish eating it, you have no more junk food in the house, no more distractions of dopamine that can creep up on you during the middle of the week. Another big one is to starve out pornography. Look, I'll be really honest with you. Pornography was something I struggled with for the longest time. Even in university, it's something that I had to take a peek at because, look, it gives you huge sources of dopamine, but it's not something that you should be looking at. As a Christian man of faith, I know it's a sin. It's something that's against my God. And also for all you young boys out there, look, you're objectifying women and you're promoting an entire industry that abuses people. Get off pornography. I actually made a video, an entire video teaching you how to get off of this. So if that's something that you're interested in, I encourage you to click right there, watch that video after you're done with this one. But cut out the sources of dopamine that you know are not good for you. Have an accountability partner hold you accountable to the fact that you will no longer do those things. And right now I actually want to do the 1-minute shot clock, and this is where I answer one of your questions. So if you have a question for me, go ahead and type high performance question. You gotta leave that in there, and then drop a question down below. Me and my team will find some of these comments, and if your comment gets a lot of hearts, a lot of likes, it might just get chosen for the next week's video. So make sure to drop that comment down below. And this week's question is actually gonna come from Dejana. And the question here goes, hey Richard, what about caffeine? How can I get rid of it and still be boosted to do my work? Now, Dejana, that's a really great question, and I actually want to dispel a myth, which is people need caffeine in order to function. That is a complete myth. Look, I don't know when it started, but most people, whether it's in high school and university, or maybe during the first 9-to-5 job, everyone just loved drinking coffee. And in the same way that we've been talking about developing a dopamine tolerance, people always develop a caffeine tolerance. Think about the first time you had a cup of coffee and you were wired all the way to the end of the night. And then perhaps you still had some difficulty falling asleep. But then maybe as you drink more and more coffee, all of a sudden now it takes you 2, 3, 4 cups of coffee to get the the same effects. It is objectively totally possible for you to perform at the same level without caffeine. In fact, for the past 2 years or so, I've never really taken caffeine. Caffeine makes me really jittery because I'm so sensitive to it now that I have no tolerance. But before, I remember my first year at UCLA, I could take Monster Energy, I could drink cups of coffee and it wouldn't affect me because I had such a large tolerance. So Dejana, for you and for anyone else who might be struggling with caffeine, go cold turkey. Stop drinking caffeine all the way for a minimum of 2 weeks and then see how much higher your energy levels are gonna go after that little dip in energy happens, because it will transform your life. Now look, when it comes to changing our lives and our performance, we often need more than just a YouTube video. So if you want some accountability, you want someone to actually give you some actionable tips that will take your performance to the next level, I wanted to let you know about this coming Saturday. Because this Saturday I'm hosting a live high performance masterclass in which I'm gonna show you how to double your productivity and take off 12.5 hours of your current work week. So if that's something that you like, go ahead and click the first link down in the description below. That's gonna take you to a page in which you can type your name, your email, pick the best time that works for you, and I'll see you on this coming Saturday's live masterclass. Remember, how you do one thing is how you do absolutely everything. So go out there, go crush it. I'll see you next time. Hey, if you're new to this channel, my name is Richard. Think about a time that you had, oh my gosh, we can't talk today.